So literally yesterday, I uploaded the video, why did Transformers look so realistic? And it was probably the single biggest research project I've ever done. If you look in the description for that video, you can see that I had to remove just random parts of the description, like the summary of the video and those nice aesthetic lines I like to put breaking up the different columns, because the amount of links in the sources description was just ridiculously long. You know, I looked everywhere I could to find any shred of information about Transformers visual effects, to the point where I was like emailing the people who worked on it, who didn't reply to me, but also emailing other YouTubers like Theorymus, who gave me so much support with the video, just to find any extra tiny little crumbs of information that could make the video as good as possible. So when literally today, which is literally the next day from me uploading the video, I found this absolutely massive document covering loads more stuff about Transformers' visual effects, I was kind of kicking myself. And so that's why I thought we'd make this sort of additional video where we can go through this document, which is just a fantastic article by this lady here, Jodie Duncan, from the now defunct website newspaper publisher Cinefex, and just see basically what bits I missed, because there's some ridiculously interesting bits in this video that I absolutely wish I could have put into the main video. So I'm hoping to give them just a little spotlight here, and we can also expand on a few points that we just briefly touched on in the main video as well. And so what I've done, because this document here is a bit horrendously formatted, I've put it into this Word document here and just marked like the interesting bits. So we can just go through it section by section and read the good bits. But I do just want to clarify, this isn't my work. All credit goes to Jodie Duncan and everyone else who worked on Transformers. I'm just sat here reading it and hopefully converting kind of nerdy CGI information into understandable English, I hope, with my ridiculous British accent. So without any further ado, let's dive into this article, shall we? So the first thing I found quite interesting in this article was that Michael Bay kind of shot this thing like a madman, and despite being on like a $200 million movie, he essentially shot it like an indie film, where they just run around, plonk the camera down, film something, and then kind of worry about all the millions of technical problems that causes you in post. You know, so cheaper films with lots of visual effects like District 9 or The Creator kind of do this too to save money. But when you're doing a massive film like Transformers, this is a crazy thing to do, because as they mentioned in the article, when you shoot visual effects, you want to capture as much of the real world information as possible. So usually the artist on set will spend forever getting light readings and taking pictures of the environment so they can then reflect those environments off the CGI, or just measuring how far away one thing is from something else so that when you get it into 3D land, you can get all your measurements correct, and just taking all of this meticulous, in-depth data so that you can recreate your visual effects as realistically as possible. But when Michael Bay is running around with the camera and you're trying to keep up with him, then you don't really have the chance to take all of this information, and it makes it a lot harder in post-production to get your visual effects looking right. But at the same time, as they say in the article, this gave the film its sort of free and cinematic look that it had, because now there wasn't the standard constraints of heavy CGI slowing everything down, and you had this much more dynamic and free camera work. Right, now this one is really interesting, and I'm really annoyed I couldn't get this in the main video. But essentially, they sort of discuss here how a massive key to making the robots look realistic was they purposely had them interact with the world around them. So they'd have them knock stuff over or blow stuff around as they moved with all their momentum and their weight. Even down to the tiniest little things like having stones jiggle around as they walk past them or the ground crack. And to quote Jeff White here, who I think was the digital production supervisor on Transformers, he goes as far as saying those are the little things that sold the weight of the robot and their presence in the environment. Because even if you light your CGI correctly and have it look brilliant, if the environment doesn't interact with that CGI in a way that's realistic, then it's still gonna stand out from the frame in some way. Something's gonna be wrong. So the fact that they went as far as making pebbles jiggle to sell the illusion of them being there really shows the efforts they went to. Right, this was another fun one. This basically, in short, just says, because there were so many explosions in this movie, they basically made an asset library of things they could blow up. So concrete, plaster, rocks, post boxes, parking meters, smashed up building parts like fire escapes, just so basically they could simulate an explosion, because you know that's how an explosion is made, because there's so much detail, it's a computer simulation, and they could just chuck all of this stuff into the explosion to make bayhem, as they put it, as easy as possible. All right, what else is there? Okay, this one was really interesting, and it's something we kind of covered in the video, but like essentially if you watch a Transformers cartoon, they always play the transformation animation like the same one every time, particularly in like the ones from the early 2000s. It's just them in that sort of space hyperspeed looking thing and they do a little transformation animation, the same one every single time. And that's obviously to save money on like animation and effort and time. But on Transformers, because it's some big cinematic masterpiece, they couldn't do that. And so it sort of took them a bit by surprise that they had to make an individual transformation for every different camera angle rather than an individual transformation for every different character. And so in that regard, it's something you don't really think about. You kind of assume that Optimus Prime's transformation is the same every single time, but it's not, because as we said in the main video, it's all custom done for that camera. Right, this was another one I found really interesting and I wish I could have got in the video, which is that, you know, all those weird one-off characters like Mountain Dew robot and Nokia phone robot and Xbox robot that are all essentially just product placement. They were basically handled by Michael Bay, at the time at least, his own visual effects company called Digital Domain, who I think are independent now. And the politics of that is quite interesting, because the reason these robots were handled by a different company is that they didn't want the main company, ILM, to have to share all the main hero robots with the secondary company working on the project, because then it just gets too complicated, right? I mean, nowadays studios tend to share assets with ease, but I think it's because it's just easier to send stuff to people nowadays. But even then, sometimes one studio will have their version of an asset and another studio will have their version. So it doesn't always happen. However, I'm assuming it was also done like this because these product placement robots might have been a bit of an afterthought, right? Like they didn't know when they were shooting what Mountain Dew bot was going to be. Was he going to be Coca-Cola bot, or was he going to be Lucasade bot, or was he going to be Mountain Dew bot? And so I'm assuming that they sort of outsourced these robots to a different company so that then it didn't get in the way of the main company's work on the project. I have no evidence of that at all, but this company didn't just do the product placement robots. They also helped out on basically everything that wasn't the hero robots. So when they crashed down to Earth in those like pod things, that was this second company, and a lot of the explosions and some other bits were all done by this company. So ILM, you know, the big George Lucas, now owned by Disney visual effects company, does deserve a lot of credit for Transformers, but I feel like Digital Domain is always forgotten for their efforts on this film, so shout out to them. And so finally, there's also this one last quote here by Scott Farrer, who I think was the lead artist on this whole project. And I wish I found this article, because it's such a nice quote by him, and I wish I could have put this in the video. But he basically just said they aimed really high, they beat their expectations, and they're all really proud of it, which is quite a nice little quote really that sort of sums up all the hard work that went into Transformers. So yeah, thank you for watching this video, and I intend to make a lot more of these videos because there's almost always something that doesn't make it into the heavily edited and heavily produced main channel video. So if you want to see more freeform, chill, less produced visual effects content, then please let me know in the comments below what your thoughts on this were, and do like the video, and of course subscribe so I sort of know people are actually interested in this and do actually want to see more. Anyway, thank you very much for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.